Hey, what's up guys? Today we're checking out some SD model kits now available in this big set here. This is the SD BB Senshi Mobile Suit Gundam 0083 Stardust memory set that is available here. Now all of these kits in this set are old. I don't know the exact release date for each of them individually, but we've got the GPO1FB, the GPO3 in the Dedrobium, we've got the New Zeal, and we've got the GPO2A. So really cool set here if you're a Stardust memory fan. Can't say that these kits are going to necessarily look that good straight out of the box. I mean, I'm sure they're going to have some stickers that are going to help, but they're still probably going to be missing like a lot of color apps. So I was thinking it would probably make sense to get out the Gundam markers, and I'm probably going to add some detail painting in on some of these just a little bit, just to kind of help give them a little bit more detail, because like I said, I believe these kits, I'm not sure if it's going to say anywhere on here when each of these were individually released, but they're kind of dated. That said, the Dedrobium in particular is certainly a really nice option for you guys if you can't stomach the price of getting the HGUC Dedrobium, which is a really cool kit, but it's huge, it takes up a ton of space, and it's expensive. So if you wanted something, like if you're a fan of the Dedrobium and you just wanted something a bit more affordable and something that doesn't take up quite so much space, the SD version is a good option that a lot of people like to go for, and the other SD kits in here do also look pretty nice, especially if you're a fan of 0083. So let's go ahead and get into it for today's video. So even though of course the kits are going to be quite small, the box is quite large here, as you can see, and pretty cool how they have just put the box art from the different kits here all kind of together. As you can see, all four of those there. Makes for a pretty cool looking box here of the set. On the side, it's just going to be kind of similar, just the different sets included all there like that. I think it's the same on both sides. On the bottom is going to feature some of the sample photos of obviously the built and painted kits of the GPO1FB, the Dedrobium, and then kind of some more information there. And the information is in Japanese and in English, which is nice. Over here you can see some more about the GPO2 and the New Zeal, so kind of like the good side and the bad side there, sort of as it were. And then on this side of the box we can see some cool like composite images there with the built and painted kits with some like added effects and background and everything, which look pretty cool there. So I'm curious to find out exactly how these are going to be packaged. Hopefully they're packaged like as a set, like each set individually, and it looks like that may sort of be the case, kind of. Like maybe this bag is this one and this one's probably all of our parts for the New Zeal. This set is probably all the parts for the GPO1FB, I would imagine. No, there's some Dedrobium parts. So this is for the GPO3, so that's some of the Dedrobium parts there. This is some more Dedrobium parts here, obviously. This bag looks like it's all the parts for the GPO1FB, including the stickers and polycaps. So it's nice that the stickers and polycaps are also kind of packaged together with each set, it looks like maybe. And then this set here, these two bags are of our stickers, polycaps, and parts here for the GPO2, it looks like. And then all of our separate instruction manuals are all packaged together here in this bag as well. This is kind of fun. We've got the Zephyranthes's instruction manual, the Sysalis instruction manual, the Dedrobium instruction manual, and the New Zeal instruction manual. And this paper here, I don't think is really going to be anything too important. Basically just a parts list for the entirety of the set. Don't really know why that's particularly necessary, considering that I would imagine each one of these instruction manuals has its own parts list. But I do want to go in order. Well, what I would assume makes sense to go in order here, starting from the GPO1. So let's just start off with this one here. You can see a nice built photo there and some more reference images here on the back. So it looks like you can make it as either the regular GPO1 or as the FB version there, it looks like, which would make sense because it's only a couple of different parts, and especially in SD form, you would imagine that they probably would be able to give you those extra couple of parts on one of the runners. So on the inside here, got some really cool illustrations and sort of like a mini comic sort of looking thing there. Really nice. If you guys are into like SD, especially illustration work and things like that, there's a lot of really cool stuff in here. You got Sima's Gelgoog Marine there, I believe that is, right? So some really cool artwork featured in here, the GPO1 versus the GPO2. Painting guide down there, illustrations of the weapons and accessories and everything. A lot of really cool stuff. As far as the instructions go, I mean, it's obviously going to be pretty straightforward. You got the parts list here and all of our instructions for assembly like that. With it being a SD kit, and in particular an older, very simple SD kit, it's not exactly going to be the most complex construction. So, all right, looks pretty good. Let's move on then to the Dedrobium, which I'm going to imagine is going to be very similar. We got some sample photos here on the backside of the Gundam separated from the Dedrobium unit too. So that's something that you can do with this set as well if you so choose. On the inside, less of like the comic illustration work, which is kind of a shame, but you have the painting guide here, some more text about the Gundam, some more images showing some of the different kind of poses and stuff, I guess, sort of poses in quotation marks that you can do with this. You got kind of the lineage of the GP series of Gundams there as well. And then other than that, just the parts list and construction here for the Dedrobium unit and a GP03. Of course, I guess we probably should have gone to the GP02 next, just going in like numerical order, but I just figured we'd do like the good guy suits first. As for the GP02, it's going to be, looks like very similar, well, kind of a little bit of a mix. So we got some nice sample images here with some text, painting guide, but then the illustration work here for the bazooka, beam saber, and shield. You got some illustrations right there of the Gundam. And then on this page, again, it's showing kind of the same part down there at the bottom, kind of the lineage, and some more images of the built and painted kit accompanied by the parts list and construction on the inside there for that one. And then lastly, the New Zeal looks really good with all like the pre-shading and everything on there once it's all painted up. I actually really like the look of that one. On the inside, we've got the parts list and construction, but as for our color pages here, some detail images of some aspects of the kit. It does look like it's kind of got all the gimmicks that you would expect for this, the wire guided arms. I hope that we actually have some wires included. Yeah, we do actually do, so that's cool. It's a little advertisement down here for the Dedrobium unit. And then some more images of the kit. We got a little bit of like character bio over here too, which is pretty cool. Some, well, at least one still from the anime, and like the character stills there. Some more images that look like images from the SD, well, one of the SD games there, I guess, most likely. So, all right, let's go ahead and just go in that same order here for each of these sets, going through the runners and the stickers. So for the GP01, we've got our sticker sheet here, which gives us a couple options for the eyes, a bunch of little color app stickers on there. Got some poly caps here, PC102 in gray. Then we've got runners A1 and A2. So A1's just gonna be all here in white. You can see some nice details on there though for some of these parts. Runner A2 is going to be a 4-color runner with some more white, and it is in like a little bit of that kind of minty white kind of color, like kind of old school style. Got some blue parts over here, red parts over here, and gray parts over here for the rifle and backpack mostly for those gray parts. So it's definitely going to be missing a lot of color apps for sure, but looks pretty nice. Moving on then to the GP03 and Dedrobium. So the sticker sheet, pretty minimal for this one, basically just for the eyes, the parts for the cameras, a couple little bits there around on the head, mostly it seems for the GP03. We do have some polycaps here once again in gray. This is polycap runner PC123 there, pretty familiar one. Runners A1 and A2 are connected here. Runner A2 being this blue section over here on the side. Runner A1 is this white parts, a couple of red parts up there, a couple of gray parts down here. And this does seem like it is not all parts for just the GP03. There is some parts of the Dedrobium on here. So it's not like it's like one runner is all just all the parts of the GP03. And then the Dedrobium separate. It is kind of all the runners are all just kind of like the parts are all kind of mixed basically, because here we have runners B1 and B2, which again you can see there's some parts on here for the GP03, some parts for the Dedrobium, so it's kind of all together here, all of these white parts. And then runner C, some more of the larger parts for the Dedrobium unit, and including our beam saber there as well, which unfortunately is all going to be molded in white. Moving on then to the GP02, which again has a fairly minimal sticker sheet here with some stickers for the eyes and some yellow little color app details, just a few little bits on there. Interestingly, once again, a different polycap runner here, PC111 for our polycaps there in gray. And then 3 runners here for this one. Once again, the runner A1 and A2 are just molded together. So you got some gray, red, blue, and the main color here is in that kind of typical off-white, but it's pretty light compared to like the HG and the MG, I believe, are both like a little bit darker tone than this one. This one's just kind of barely off-white, kind of beige beige in color. Here on runners B1 and B2, some more of that color for the main parts of the body and the shield parts on here, as you can see, which does look pretty nicely detailed. Runner C then, some parts in gray for the bazooka, V-fin, and a couple of other detailed parts there in gray for this set. And then last but not least for the Neue, which is probably going to be my favorite of the bunch, I'm anticipating, but we'll see. We got stickers, which is just stickers for the mono eye, basically one if you want to have it looking straight, one if you want to have it looking left, and one for right. So you just have some options there for the direction of the mono eye essentially. And then our black wire for the wire guided claw. I imagine we're going to cut this down into a couple of pieces, but the overall total length of wire that you have included here is 24 centimeters. And then once again, a different polycap runner here. This is PC123, which I guess is the same one that we had before, but this is a smaller section of the PC123 runner there for our polycaps, once again in gray. Runners A1 and A2 going to be a lot of parts here in green for the kit. Honestly, doesn't look all that dissimilar from the HG Mechanics version of this kit. I know it's like proportionally going to be different, but it would be interesting if I had that kit. I used to have it a long time ago, but if I still had it, I would love to show you guys a side-by-side of the two of these kits together. But definitely check out the HG Mechanics Neue kit if you guys are a fan of the design. We've also then got runners B and C here in gray on runner B, some nice detail on those. And then runner C is interesting as these parts are in like a softer, flexible kind of plastic, which makes sense maybe for like these hose bits right there. That's kind of something that Bandai likes to do, but for like these mechanical arm bits, not really sure why. I guess that just makes them less prone to breaking with them being sort of thin and fragile, especially with SD kits. A lot of times are kind of designed with more like littler kids in mind. So with these thin parts like that, I guess with like a regular PS plastic, that might be more prone to breaking. I don't know. But anyway, that's it. And you got the claw parts on there as well. So that's all for all of the runners. Let me go ahead and get these built up and then we'll go through them and see what they're all like. And so actually, instead of Gundam markers, I decided to try out some of these new AK play markers for tabletop gamers that we've had here at USA Gundam Store, and I've been meaning to try them, so I thought this was a good opportunity too. I actually played around a little bit with the just black ones just to try it for panel lining, and I found it actually works really well. So for example, the panel lining on this one and all the rest of the parts here that you're going to see for this set is all done with just the black play marker here, and I just actually did the cleanup. I found that the cleanup works well with either lighter fluid, which is usually what I use for cleanup, but also the gun primer solvent worked well for cleaning this up as well. And it seems like with these markers basically just being acrylic paint based, I didn't find that water actually works well, because as you can see here it says waterproof, so it's acrylic based, which normally you can like thin with water or clean up with water, but in this case water is not going to work. You are going to need either something like the solvent or, as I said, lighter fluid or whatever you might typically use for cleaning up your panel lining. But I've been using this just for some detail painting as well. So in case you've not used these markers, basically just have to kind of shake them up like normal. And then when you remove the cap here on the back, there's a button there, so the cap helps you from keep pushing the button accidentally, but when you push the button, the paint will flow into the tip there and wet it. And I found that these actually work pretty well. So this is like overflowing now, but I actually found that they work well if you kind of overflow it at first and then use it after that, because otherwise if you try to use it when it's still like too dry, it's kind of like not enough paint for the application. As usual for like these darker areas like these thruster bells on the back of the Dedrobium parts, I went ahead and just painted a little bit of white in there first before painting the red, just to make sure that our red is nice and bright. And I did find this red to be sort of like a pinkish red, so if you want like a darker red, I would maybe get a different color. And I found the markers to work pretty well. I used a handful of them and I found the opacity of some to be a little bit stronger than others. So some like I had to go over a couple times, and then it seemed like in order to get like a nice full opacity, I had to like really pool the paint on there, which I will say the paint leveled out pretty well when it dried, but it just kind of makes it harder to control, because then like the paint, it wants to drip and it wants to flow in other places if you have so much on there. So you have to like have really tight control over the paint. Either that or just build up more layers if the opacity is kind of low. But then I found even putting more layers on, it tends to reactivate the paint from their first layer a little bit, and instead of just painting on top of that, it might end up moving around some of that paint as well. So it can be a little bit tricky, but I will say the ease of use is definitely there. And so if you're looking for something, you know, for just really simply adding some little details to your kits, these can definitely work really well for that. So now that they're a little bit detailed up here, we'll start off with the GPO one. So with a combination of the stickers and some detail painting on this, looking much better. For the detail painting, basically did some panel lining around on it in some of the bits, not everything. And then a little bit of extra painting around for like the head Vulcans, in the thrusters, in the sides of the shoulders, a little bit of some of like the details on the backpack, silver in the thruster bells, gray for an accent there. And so really not a whole lot, but with this set, you do have a lot of other stuff with it for all the parts to convert it into the full burn-in version. So with the kit in hand here, as far as like articulation or anything, I mean, with these old SD kits, there's really not much to go over as far as the articulation goes. I mean, and also I want to point out that the way that it holds the shield is pretty asinine in that it just kind of holds it straight into the hand here. There's not like a curve, like a bent handle or something. It can actually bend the arm. So if it had a handle that was more like just an L shape, that definitely would have worked better. But as it is, you just kind of have to plug the shield into the front of the arm basically, and it's pretty stuck in this position. One thing that I'm now realizing that I forgot to paint was the hands. The hands, obviously, the fingers should be gray. Forgot to paint that, but that's okay anyway. You guys still get the idea. But so the shield, the way that it has to hold the shield then is just kind of like right on the front of the arm like that, which is pretty awkward. But otherwise, as far as our accessories, of course, other than that, we have the beam rifle over here on this side. And again, because the arm can actually do a pretty decent bend there at the elbow, you can sort of have the beam rifle posed. Of course, you can rotate the head, and then you do have the option of the more traditional cutesy SD eyes if you prefer those, but I went for the more kind of normal Gundam eyes. We actually have two beam sabers with this, one that was molded all in red and one that was molded all in white. So for the white version, I went ahead and painted that. Actually, this is the only thing that I painted that was not with a play marker. This one actually was with a Gundam marker, a fluorescent pink Gundam marker there for that. Works really well. So the red one I'm just not going to use, but this one that was all in white now with the pink beam effect definitely is going to work pretty well for that. And then otherwise it's basically just parts to convert it to the full burn-in. So here we have the backpack. Again, did a little bit of detailed painting on that. The red on the inside of there is actually little red stickers, and then just painted like some black and silver kind of around those just to kind of help bring out those little vernier details. We've got different foot parts, which basically means you have to use the white part there from the top of the foot. It's a different red part for the bottom, and then a different kind of ankle armor part that goes over the top there for the feet. You have a different part here for the bottom of the torso. Instead of being red, it's supposed to be white, so you have to swap that out. And then the skirt armor also you have to swap out. So this entire waist section, basically that skirt armor section. And I will say, this is kind of a lot that you have to parts form, so I would probably recommend just choosing from the start which version you want to make, and then just make it rather than having to build one version and then take it apart to swap it to make the other version. Then another color swap bit is basically just going to be the cockpit hatch is meant to be red instead of blue, so you have to swap that out. And then the chest vents, it's hard to hold these things. I keep dropping these little bits, hard to show them. But yeah, the little chest vents here, those are white parts just with a yellow sticker that wraps all the way around that for the new chest vents. And then the shoulder parts. And again, the shoulder parts, this was a combination of painting black, red, and silver there for the details on those, and a little bit of panel lining around just for those shoulder armor parts there for the full burn-in. So taking a look at this guy in a few poses here, and in both variations, you can see that, yeah, I mean, this being the oldest of the bunch, coming out in 1999, I mean, it's just kind of a classic old SD BB Senshi. They're really not going to do a whole lot, and they're going to take a fair amount of work in order to like look really good. With just a little bit of work here, I think it doesn't look too bad at all. So I would say this kit and the rest of the kits that we're going to be looking at here today, you know, they don't take a ton of work to really look good. Just a little bit of work can certainly be a big improvement, but just kind of depends on just how accurate you want to make it to the original artwork, of course. And so as for me, I just kind of wanted to make them look a little bit better than how they look straight out of the box, and so I'm happy with the look of these. And while I'm not a huge fan of SD generally, and especially these older type ones, like I definitely like the MG SD stuff and like the SD Cross Silhouette series as well, just because they're not quite so squished proportions as these older style SDs. I gotta say, it does look pretty good. And so up next then for the GPO2, for this one with, again, a combination of stickers and paint markers there, we've got this looking pretty good. Not 100% color accurate, but definitely a lot better than it was straight out of the box, as you can see here. And the stickers, I will say, do actually work quite nice. if you were to only use the stickers and not do anything else, I mean, that still does make them look pretty good. This one in particular definitely looks really nice with a little bit of added details and colors to it. I will say top coat also would help all these look better as well. It's one thing that I didn't do for them, but would certainly be another easy step to improve the look of these overall. But basically for the GPO2, everything that's included is here except for the beam saber effect part. Now again, with this one, that's just painted with the fluorescent pink Gundam marker. Beam saber handles are actually right here in the side skirts, and these are an actual functioning gimmick. A lot of times you might expect that to just be like a molded detail and the beam saber handle separate, but it does actually pull out of there, and then you kind of have to plug this into that like that, and it doesn't feel like the strongest connection there, like a little bit wobbly, but should be just fine for our beam saber, and that looks really nice. Here for the shield, of course, we got the stickers, and then I had to paint in the yellow vents there. In this case, the shield actually does have that better shaped L-shaped connection here instead of a straight connection right into the hand, which is definitely useful for holding up the shield. But like with any version of the GPO2, it can't really hold up the shield on its own. It's just too big and heavy. But painted a little bit of detail here on the back. This just opens up like that, and the top half of the nuke bazooka is stored in here. It's a little bit tricky to get that out. There we go. You can just pull that out of there like so. I painted inside the barrel there with some black just to help that look a bit more convincing. And the back half of them, of course, here is just stored onto the back, and that will move up and down to come up over the shoulder. You can actually kind of raise this up a little bit, and that's the one thing with this kit in particular, and with all of them. I didn't really mention this talking about the GPO1, but with all of these, they have a lot of loose bits that just kind of tend to fall out like there. Even while I'm putting this part back on, the thruster bell here fell out from the back. So a lot of these little loose bits like that, I would just recommend just gluing them in place, you know, whether you're planning to paint or not, you know, whenever you're done with everything and ready to display it, I would recommend just gluing some of these bits, that especially the parts that aren't moving parts. So anyway, the front half of the bazooka will plug into there like that. If this is actually able to get this into the hand, I think would be somewhat of a miracle. I don't think it's gonna work, but let's see. So I think I need to actually raise this up a bit more here at the back, because it needs to ultimately kind of come completely over the shoulder, and then you need to have the arm basically straight, and then it should get into the hand there. So yeah, it is actually does fitting into the hand there. These side parts here, the binders will actually fold out, and you can actually angle that down like so, and those are actually joined together, the inside one and the outer one, so that those move together. I'm trying to move it with one hand, it's kind of difficult there. There you go, you can see like that, and then the back one you just have to move separately there. So that actually works quite well there, I gotta say. And the cool thing about this one too is that you have nice full detail up underneath the feet as well, whereas for the GPO1 they were just flat with some hollow gaps in there. So cool to have that extra detail there. And I think this one, again, neither of these kits, and I don't think any of these kits have an actual way built into them for plugging onto an action base. But as you saw there with the GPO1, you can kind of use an action base. You just kind of have to figure out a place basically where this can kind of just hang on to the kit sort of in some way. I was just kind of like shoving it up into the back skirt here, basically just doing something like that, and then you can get it to be up in the air like that. So it actually works pretty well. Taking a look at this one then in a couple poses too, and again, I mean, you know, these are all going to be limited in terms of the posing options that you can do with them. I feel like this one in particular, because of the weight of that shield, I mean, it's always going to be an issue for any version of the GPO2 from Bandai, at least anyway, I guess we could say, at least for the time being, until they make like a new, I don't know what it might be, some kind of RG or MG 2.0 or something, whatever the next version of this that Bandai might make eventually at some point, I don't know, but hopefully if and when that day comes, they will have figured out a way for it to actually hold up the shield. But again, you can see with this one how just a little bit of extra work on this to paint in some of the extra little details and pen align a little bit on this makes a big difference. Obviously there's again much more that you could do, but just as an example, I hope this kind of helps to illustrate for you guys how a little bit of extra work definitely improves the look of this one. I think it actually ends up looking really quite nice. Of course, you do have lots of like seam lines and some hollow gap areas and things that could definitely do with some fixing. So again, if you really wanted to make it look its best, you know, it's going to take a lot more work, but at least for now, just doing a little bit of minimal work, I think it looks pretty good. So next up then on to the GPO3, and we'll take a look at the mobile suit first before we get into the mobile armor. armor, the Dedrobium, as just kind of like a separate unit here, but just as the mobile suit, it looks really cool. Definitely, honestly think it's my favorite of the three, just in terms of like the original design. That said, I mean, in SD form, I find it to just be a little bit lackluster here just compared to the other two. I think the other two had like a certain charm to them that that just seems like a little bit just kind of missing from this. It seems very plain, but like with the other two, I mean, it definitely looks a lot better when it's detailed up a little bit. This one, I hardly did any kind of detail painting because most of the mobile suit is white anyway, and so there's like very little detail painting to do other than just kind of like adding a little bit of panel lining in on some of the white areas. And this one was a little bit different in that, if you guys remember from the sticker sheet, we don't actually have a sticker for the eyes, for like the cutesy SD style eyes. You just only have these regular eyes here. But one of the things that I did have to paint was the cameras for the weapons. So here for the bazooka, just to kind of take this out of the hand for a second here, the reason why the handle is so particularly long is just, again, for it to actually reach into the hand here, you kind of just have to make the arm straight, and the back end is still just kind of blocked by the shoulder, so the handle needs to be like kind of particularly long for it to actually be able to hold it. Now, the other thing is that I drilled out the barrel, which looks good from one side, but you'll notice the weapon is hollow, so it just kind of looks a bit odd, kind of depending on the angle. So it's better than just like a flat surface, I think. It's better that that's actually drilled out, but it might be a good idea to go in and fill that in. And then the same thing goes for the beam rifle. So for the beam rifle as well, again, I painted the scope on that one, and for both these it's just painted white and then red over the top of it. For the beam rifle's barrel, I also drilled that out a little bit there, just because that was originally just a flat little tip there as well. You have a little bit of a hollow gap in this, but not near as bad as the bazooka. But unfortunately, like with the GPO1, it holds the shield in the same very awkward way where the handle just plugs straight into the hand there. And of course, there's no way to rotate the hand. You can rotate the entirety of the forearm there at the elbow, and you do still have a pretty good elbow bend there, getting about 90 degrees, which is pretty good. But other than that, the Gundam here all gonna be pretty standard. The stickers do a good job of giving us the details like the vents, the little red there on the front of the crotch, and then camera stickers for not only the front, but also the camera sticker for the back of the head we have here as well, as something that we didn't have for the other Gundams. And then for the additional equipment that we have here on the back, it's got this backpack up here where obviously there's no functionality of these working as like actual like clasping parts there like on the other versions of the GPO3, but those can just be rotated a little bit. You have hollow gaps on the inside of those as well though too, unfortunately. And these parts here for like the back skirt can also be moved up and down. Little flap can also be moved a little bit there. That's kind of about it. You do have decent detail up underneath the feet, better than the GPO1, not quite as nice as the GPO2, but kind of somewhere in between with some hollow gaps there mixed in with some nice details. So a little bit, kind of between the two. So aside from the beam rifle, bazooka, and a shield, which again, that's just stickers there for that, we do have a beam saber as well. And again, with this one, I just painted that with the fluorescent pink Gundam marker, and this is just going to fit into the hand as normal. So normally, I guess these backpack parts actually just open up to, because that's where the beam saber handles are stored, right? They're not like clasping. The clasping parts are on the back of the elbow. Obviously, that's not a working function here with the SD, but anyway, the beam saber works in hand there really nice. With that fluorescent pink Gundam marker, it did a really good job to change these just white sticks into much more better looking convincing beam saber parts there. So we'll take a look at the Gundam here in a couple poses with its different weapons on its own before we check out the Dedrobium unit, even though these are usually sold as a set. I mean, not as like this full set like we're taking a look at here today. Usually just the GPO3 and Dedrobium is sold as an SD set. So normally if you're getting one, you're getting both, but if for whatever reason you wanted to keep the GPO3 just kind of out on its own, there is a number of poses, of course, that you can do with this, just with the weapons that it has, and it works pretty nicely just as a SD representation of just the GPO3 without the Dedrobium unit. But of course, I think most people are going to be wanting to display this with the Dedrobium unit. But before we do that, again, yeah, just to say that obviously with this just being an SD, you are going to be limited, but the weapon options that you have with this one are pretty nice. I think you do have some good, some decent, enough display options for how you might want to have this posed or how you might want it to be displayed, whether you want it to have just standing or if you try to put it up on some kind of action base. I think it looks pretty good in a flying pose, so not too bad. Let's take a look at the Dedrobium here next then. So with the Dedrobium, we do have a lot of detail there. It is kind of mostly white, but there's definitely a lot of details that you could paint in just different shades of gray. You have like the thrusters at the back that need to be painted in red, which didn't come out the greatest, but at least they're reddish. Those definitely could have used a little bit more work on my part, but you guys get the idea. Obviously the beam saber went ahead and painted that in the same way. The beam saber effect anyway, obviously an optional part part and not something that you have to have on there. I'll show that to you some more here in just a second. And it is really kind of cool how the GPO3 will attach into the Dedrobium also, but just gonna go ahead and remove that. It's not really like clipped into or like pegged in there in any way. There's not like a peg, it's just kind of just held in there. So these little mouths here at the bottom will open up on either side. You do only have the one beam saber though that you can use there. Obviously the doors here up on top will open up. There's not really a good mechanism for those to stay open. You kind of just have to make sure this part is pressed in hard enough to get the friction required for that to just kind of stay open there, but it's just kind of barely staying open. Obviously both sides can open up, and again, yeah, these are all meant to be like gray, but I just kind of painted in a little bit of the details there just to give that a little bit more contrast. And then here on the sides as well, just kind of filled in a little bit of the gray details here and there. Again, nothing like that well, but just enough to give you guys the idea. This would also, I think, benefit from some nice decals, because that's one thing that like on the HD version, you know, you see a lot of builds where people put like the big decals here on the side, especially up here on like these large missile pods. I don't know if there's any third-party decal set specifically for the SD version, though I would assume you can probably find decals for it, and it's something that I would recommend just because you have these large white open spaces here. Yeah, some cool detail underneath, but again, with this one, there's nowhere to plug this onto an action base. This one would be really easy though. Just drill a hole up into the bottom of this and you can stick it up on an action base. In order to actually plug the Gundam in, you're gonna like push the Gundam's chest forward and fold this part back. The backpack parts, you need to fold back. The legs basically gonna fold back. It's basically going to like bend in half at the waist section there. You need to bend the arms up like this at 90 degrees. And then the Dedrobium unit, this part folds up, and then the Gundam just kind of fits here into this space. Now, this is actually the first time that I'm trying it here on camera, so let's see if I can get this into place here. Make sure the feet are straight in. And there are two little tabs where this is meant to plug in. One tab at the back and then one at the bottom front of the chest, so you kind of have to get it just so in there. Also need to make sure that those backpack parts are up far enough so that they'll go inside there, and then when we close this up, should be, watch out for the V-fin. I don't really know kind of what you have to do about that. I guess you have to like make sure this is either closed or open when you close this up. So let's close this up first while trying to keep everything in place, and there we go. Anyway, so set in place. I mean, it's pretty cool, pretty convincing if you like, as long as you don't look inside there and notice that the Gundam's like bent in half, and it's basically just like the Gundam's chest and head that are sat right in here. But definitely painting some of the inside parts of the Dedrobium in like a darker gray or something will help to kind of hide that. But it does look pretty cool, I gotta say. Nothing really else moves on this, and as you just saw there a second ago, it's gonna be hard to even open up these front doors with the V-fin in the way, but it can still, of course, hold the weapons, and then the Gundam can also hold its weapons as well, although like not straight on. I feel like the bazooka might be particularly challenging. The beam rifle might be a little bit easier and might be a bit better with the door open, as that's also kind of getting in the way. But you could kind of have it holding the bazooka there like that, and the shield as well is going to be kind of tricky just because the way that that is held in the hand. I believe that typically in the Dedrobium form, it's usually not holding the shield like that, if I remember correctly. But anyway, you can kind of still make it do it. Anyway, there you go. I think it still looks pretty cool. So as far as the Dedrobium goes here, I mean, like with the rest of them, it's going to be pretty limited, but that's just not only just due to the fact that it's an SD, but also due to the fact that it's just a big mobile armor, and kind of, you know, you can have the missile pod doors open, you can have the beam saber extended, or, you know, not, and that's kind of about it. It's not going to have a ton of options there, kind of like with the HG. But the really great thing about this, if you're a fan of the GPO3 and the Dedrobium unit, this is definitely a good small and cheap option compared to the HG version, which is obviously much larger, much more expensive. You do also have the HG Mechanics 1/550 scale version, which is another good option for you. It's not in this like SD styling, just kind of in the normal style. It's just in a much smaller scale at 1/550 scale. But if you wanted the Dedrobium and you're kind of a fan of SD style proportions and stuff, this is a pretty good option, I have to say. Definitely, you know, a lot more paint work. And as I said before, some decals and everything else, I think would definitely benefit this, and it would look even better. But I think, you know, with some work put in on this, it would actually end up looking pretty cool. And finally then, for the New Zeal, this one's really special just because this is another one where there aren't really a whole lot of kit options for the New Zeal. If you did want a kit of it, there is the HG Mechanics version model kit of this as well, but I feel like this SD version is actually a really nice version to get, just because it's small, cheap, and then even though it's in the SD proportions, it doesn't really look, you know, hugely different from the mobile armor. I mean, obviously it does look like, you know, very different, but it doesn't have legs that would like be scrunched up and like a giant head. The head is obviously larger than it would be, but still it's a design that I think works really well in SD form anyway, is my point. Now, as for the colors that I added to this, did a little bit of detail painting with it being mostly green. Basically just kind of painted in some of the thruster bells that it's got around on the design. They're supposed to be gray with red on the interior. I just went just solid gray on them. I just thought that looked nice without having the red accents on there, but of course you could add those too if you wanted. So just a little bit of panel lining and like a couple of bits here and there. I did add some like silver up in for like the piping up kind of underneath the head. You can see a little bit of that up in there for some details. And yeah, just mostly just painted some gray bits around for the thrusters, and that's kind of about it. So there wasn't really a whole lot to do, and I just didn't really add anything much more than that. But again, this one could look really cool, like a big Xeon logo or something like that, big waterside decal on the side or something. As for the accessories here, we've got two sets of these extra little like sub arms here that can fold out, or in canon they kind of fold out from up underneath here. In this case of the model kit, we have to kind of plug in, there's a whole hole up in there. You have to kind of find your way up into there you go, to get those popped into place. So you've got two on one side and then two that can go on the other side as well. And as you can see there, this arm is able to have a pretty good range of movement there. Again, just kind of like 90 degrees. Now, the arm will detach, although it's meant to detach below the elbow. There, I'm just trying to pull that off there and end up pulling the whole elbow joint. The elbow joint is supposed to stay on the arm there, and then you've got the rest of the lower arm and our black wire with the connection parts there on that. So basically one end connects into the forearm, the other end connects into where we took the forearm off of. Now, this wire is very long, and it would be awesome to be able to just cut this in half and use it for both arms, but unfortunately you only have one set of the connection pieces, which is very strange. So pretty unfortunate, because you could very easily cut this wire in half and have both arms out on the wires, but unfortunately because you only have one set of the connection pieces, it's only going to work for one arm, and the wire is going to be extremely long. So I would still maybe recommend cutting that down possibly, but even kind of like wound up like this here in a way. I mean, it holds up the claw perfectly well as long as that doesn't fall out of there. You kind of have to balance it a bit for it not to just kind of, for gravity to take over and it to just kind of fall down. But once you have it set, I mean, it holds up the weight pretty well, and I think it does look cool, but it still would have been cool to have both of the arms. Now, what you do have for the claw, and again, it's unfortunate that we only have one, but if you notice the yellow paint on my fingers from putting some yellow paint on this, so this was just molded in the same green as the main body, the beam saber effect part here. But the beam saber effect part, we only have one of, unfortunately, but that will plug right in here into the middle of the hand, claw, I guess, right here, just like that. And it's meant to be yellow, kind of like a white yellow, as it's shown in the manual here. They have like kind of a yellow to white gradient. A little bit hard to do that with markers. That'd be much easier to do with an airbrush, of course, but that works well enough. But again, really would have been nice to have two of those. Another option that you do have, of course, if you remember from the stickers, is just for the mono eye. Another thing that you could do, rather than choosing, you know, which direction you want the mono eye to be looking, just based on which sticker you use, just to paint that black and then just put a little dot on there. Anyway, the sticker options that you have, I think, are perfectly good for just the mono eye placement there for that. And then, as you saw a moment ago, the actual these stabilizers here at the back actually work really well to just basically make a tripod for this to be able to stand on its own without it needing an action base. It just works really well like that. But of course, if you did want to use an action base, again, it would be simple enough to just drill a hole up into that middle section there to be able to put this on a base. But the posing options, again, with this one, going to be fairly limited just because of the design, but I think this does look really cool. And as we test out a couple of poses with this, again, just to kind of wrap up the same thing that I've been saying for the rest of the kits in this line. I mean, these are old kits. Basically, the first one, the GPO one, came out in 1999. This came out in 2001, so we're only talking like a 2-year span for this entire series when they were originally released separately. Now packaged in this box set together, I mean, there is going to be a little bit of a noticeable difference between like the GPO one and then basically everything else. The GPO one definitely has a little bit older feel to it than the rest of them. But overall, with all of these being kind of from basically the same era of release, they're all going to have essentially the same pros and cons. And the cons are basically just going to consist of, obviously, something that's common for a lot of SD kits is just, a lot of missing color apps, as we've been talking about. Seam lines, as I haven't been talking about quite as much, but there's certainly a lot of seam lines on there that you would want to close up if you are planning on fully painting these and actually really kind of modeling them up properly. But aside from that, you will also have hollow gaps. In the case of the New Zeal here, it's got big hollow gaps in the inside back of the stabilizers there that are pretty unsightly. slightly. So all these kind of fixes that might be required for these if you wanted to make them look better, you know, are fairly simple. It's just kind of going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort. And so it's the kind of thing that you kind of really have to be into, and maybe not everyone's going to really be that into wanting, you know, really nicely modeled up SD versions of the mobile suits here from 0083. But if that is something that you think you might want to invest the time into, or if it's something that you think you might want to just invest a little bit of time into, like what I've done here for the kits, basically just for, as I'm showing them to you here in the review, with a little bit of paint work on them, and that's really kind of about it. And then again, just combined with the included stickers, I think they don't look half bad. It's just a matter of deciding what you want to do with the kits. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What do you think about this set? Are you a fan? If you want to check out this set for yourself, of course, you can check out this and much, much more at the link in the video description to USA Gundam Store. We've got lots of great stuff there on the website, including lots of SDs and everything else there, so check that out. And as always, guys, thanks so much for checking out the video here today. I know it's a little bit different, as we don't normally review a lot of SD stuff, and this in particular was a big kind of SD set of 4 kits, kind of 5 if you include the GPO3 and the Dedrobium as separate units as well. So there was kind of a lot to go over. But I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and make sure that you're subscribed for more in the future. Until then, have a good day, guys. See y'all later. Bye-bye.